if we were a movie, you could be the one to make some noise like a true friend and tell me life's what you make it. But I've got nerve. Nobody's perfect. It's all right here, and I'm just a girl mixed up in something bigger than us. So, let's do this. Oh, 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 come on. Hannah Montana had 4 seasons, 1 movie, at least 3 crossover episodes, launched real musical tours, and several careers. But it has also been off the air for over a decade, so why am I talking about it now? I think you can link Ariana Grande's success back to Hannah Montana the TV show. I think that Disney Channel would be nothing that it is today without Hannah Montana, and I think that Hannah Montana fundamentally changed the entertainment industry as we know it. I'll have all the links posted in the description box below if you have any interest in looking up more information about Hannah Montana, which, why wouldn't you?
Oversized sweatshirt buying daddy who just said 3-time Academy Award-winning director, producer of Jaws, Jurassic Park, E.T., Men in Black 1 and 2, wants me to start his next big blockbuster opposite of Mission Impossible Honky Honk Tom Cruise. Say what?
Disney Channel started in 1983, but we're jumping ahead a couple of years to 1989 and the all-new Mickey Mouse Club. So this show originally was from the 50s, not on Disney Channel, but its own thing, and it was very different from the version that we came to know that hosted people like Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, pretty sure Ryan Gosling, several other well-known people who would be well-known when they grew up, but were not any different from the other kids on the show when they were originally on. And that's, I think, where things start to be different from how everything is now. So, we're going to jump ahead even further and look at how before there was Hannah Montana, before there was High School Musical, there was Lizzie McGuire. And before that, there was a mess. Disney Channel didn't really have an identity for a good few years. They weren't really sure who they were marketing to or what direction they should be going in. And that was very evident by the programming that they had. They were kind of all over the place. They had like reality TV shows and random other kinds of programming, and there was just no unity in what they were making, and it wasn't all that popular. Lizzie McGuire changed the tone of Disney Channel, but it would continue to change far beyond that. Ooh, whoa, whoa, yeah. The year was 2006. Sequins, dresses over jeans, and unnaturally thin scarves were donned by all. Or at least Ashley Tisdale. American Idol was in its 5th season. Boulevard of Broken Dreams had just won Record of the Year, and everything was about to change. A small, unknown Disney Channel original film called High School Musical hit the air. Perhaps you've heard of it? No? I'm just kidding, of course you have. Who hasn't heard of High School Musical? It's everywhere. It's still everywhere. I mean, this whole High School Musical, the musical, the series things doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and I mean, even I was in a version of High School Musical in a theater back in 2012. But anyway, the High School Musical album sold more than 3.7 million copies in the US and 7 million worldwide. It became the best-selling album of 2006, and the soundtrack for the second movie would go on to be one of the best-selling albums of 2007. It wasn't the first time Disney had made a musical, and I'm not counting the Disney Channel princesses in this category, because it's its own breed of thing. And until Enchanted in 2007, there really wasn't a crossover between this live-action and cartoonish princess situation, unless you count Space Jam, which you could, I guess. They were the cartoon birds. That's close enough, right? No? But my point is we didn't really have this live-action Disney musical situation until the Cheetah Girls in 2003. What's interesting about them is that there wasn't actually a plan originally to make them real records, so they were supposed to just be another Disney Channel movie with songs produced for the film, but not really anything more involved than that. But a producer brought onto the film ended up convincing the other members of the team that this was a good idea, and the 4 Cheetah Girls ended up becoming a real band. They went on tours, they made real music, and they promoted the film in a way that had never been done before. It was the testing the waters kind of film that Disney hadn't really anticipated, but definitely laid the groundwork for what was to come. Also in 2003 was the Lizzie McGuire movie, Sing to Me Paolo. Ugh. The success of Hilary Duff's 2003 album and of her film both encouraged Disney to make further musical investments in their channel. 1 year later, Peter Barsanichi, something like that. 1 year later, Peter Barsanichi would write a script for his daughter Gabriella and submit it to Disney Channel, and it would be called High School Musical. I don't think I need to explain how successful this film and franchise are. It's just insane, and it's something that both Peter and Disney hadn't anticipated. It's not that Disney was the first one to do any of these sorts of things, but the timing and the attention to detail and the ways that they marketed things really showed they had their heads in the game. I'm also not saying that Disney invented putting music and television together. That's not a thing at all. You had, besides just musicals, things like Bring It On and Dirty Dancing, and even before all that, you get Sister Act and Grease and Moulin Rouge and so many other things. So it's not that they invented this concept, it's just the way that they went about it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the demographic that they were going for. This tween audience that didn't really have as much attention towards them in the same way that kids programming did or slightly older kids programming did. It was just the right market that I think was able to expand this whole area of attention to too much. I think now we pay too much attention to tweens. Maybe that's just me, but I feel like there's so much tween television, and I honestly don't even know what's going on Nickelodeon and other channels anymore, beyond what I've researched for this video. There's so many things, and it's so different from the versions of stuff that we used to grow up with. But that's just how change works. Doesn't mean I have to like it, though.
And where your heart is, that doesn't change.
You may be looking at the title of this video and saying, hey, I'm not here for all this other stuff. You got the wig, you got the title. Where's Hannah Montana? And I am not here to disappoint you. Part 2, Hannah. Yeah. Oddly enough, Hannah Montana was conceptualized in 2004, which was the same year that High School Musical was written. Strange the way the world works. But the weirdest thing to me is that originally the producers and the directors of Hannah Montana wanted JoJo to play Hannah. This JoJo. Not this JoJo. This JoJo. But she turned down the role, and Miley Cyrus had originally auditioned to play Lily. And I just am trying to imagine all of that. How odd. Anyway, Miley went on to audition for Hannah, but they thought she was too young. And so this kind of went on for a couple of years. They were searching for the perfect person, and Miley was not giving up. She kept trying, and then 2 years later, when she was 13, they were like, yeah, that's old enough. The show hit the demographic that a lot of people had been missing, like I said before, and it just struck exactly at the right moment. The premiere of Hannah Montana had 54 million views, which was the biggest premiere in Disney Channel history. And to get there, Miley had done a lot of promotional work, and she did concerts leading up to the show before it even aired. So she was becoming a pop star in the process of trying to show a show of her becoming a pop star. It was very interesting. And in all of this, she had opened for the Cheetah Girls, which is so strange. It's almost like how in, I think, 2012 or whatever, when One Direction opened for Big Time Rush, where it's just, jarring now. Cyrus was in the Billboard Top 100 for 2 weeks with her first album, and within the show's run, she had 20 Top 100 hits. She also, in 2008, beat out the Jonas Brothers and Michael Bublé for Breakthrough Artist of the Year. One of the top 100 songs was He Could Be the One, and do you remember that episode that was based off of? Because I haven't seen it probably since it aired, and it's still that 2-part episode in my brain with the song and the 2 boys. We have to watch that one when we go through this later in one of the later videos, because it's in there. As you can probably tell, just based on their marketing strategy of having her go around with the Cheetah Girls, it wasn't unintentional, the success that they had with Hannah Montana. They put a lot of work into making it what it was. Whereas High School Musical was kind of interesting because I don't think that anyone thought it was going to be as crazy big as it ended up being. Not that they didn't think it was going to succeed, because they bought, I'm pretty sure, the first version of the script that he sent in, they were like, yeah, we're gonna go forward with this project. But I don't think that they knew how big of a hit it was going to be. Where Hannah Montana, they'd been planning for years, and they really, really put a lot of effort into making it this huge phenomenon that even still, I don't think they knew how much it was going to affect everything around it. A Time magazine article from 2006 acknowledges the formula starts with simple concepts, an ordinary person in an extraordinary situation. And then Disney Channel president Rich Ross said, it has to have an aspiring quality. Hannah Montana did exactly that. It gave kids watching that could be me sort of feeling. At least it did for me, although a lot of things did. Like, I really wanted to be Kim Possible. Like, I would do flips and stuff. I did gymnastics just so I could be Kim Possible, but I'm still not. I could get a wig though. Executive producer Steven Peterman said, celebrity is huge for kids because of the sense of empowerment. And I think that that's something that really tethers a lot of other projects to Hannah Montana, is how celebrity has become the goal. It's like, now celebrity means something different than it did in 2006 or whatever, when we had just the mainstream celebrities, but now we have YouTubers and TikTokers and all these social media people that change the track of what celebrity can mean. Now it's just being known, not necessarily through the traditional avenues. And so I think that because of the way society has changed, that goal has changed, but it's still in so many Disney projects. The goal of becoming famous seems to be pushed very heavily. And I'm not saying that's directly related to Hannah Montana in its entirety, but I think it's a really good example of something that shows that. And I find that fascinating. It's like, why do we want kids to want to be famous, you know? It also is very familiar. Big time rush. Victorious. Sorry. Don't know what that was. The Hannah Montana team drew on other musicians and styles to cultivate a musical sound for their show. A Disney executive producer who worked on both the Cheeto Girls and High School Musical, Stephen Vincent, said he pulled from Shania Twain, Faith Hill, Carrie Underwood, Pink, Kelly Clarkson, and Madonna. I think that the approach is just so different from anything that we saw before, and it's like they took bits and pieces from their successes and their failures and things in other aspects of entertainment in the world, and they mixed it all together, and now we have Hannah Montana. But I don't think it had been done quite like that before, where you usually saw, like, tween programs were just sort of, you know, awkward or coming of age and that, or you get the younger side where it's just bright, colorful things, and it's kind of both. I think Hannah Montana encapsulates both of those sort of areas and meets them in the middle. And then they brought in guests like David Archuleta and Dolly Parton, and I'm sure a lot of you know that Dolly Parton is Miley Cyrus's godmother. And again, I don't really remember any of the actual details of that episode, but it has this like weird fond feeling in me, and I have to watch that one too, because I don't really remember what happens, but I remember it was just really wholesome. So it's interesting to me that like those sorts of memories can just live here and not register for almost a decade, and then just seeing one thing, it's like, oh man, it is coming back to me. David Archuleta was on in season 3 of May of 2009 and had previously been on iCarly in 2008. So they actually cross over a lot, like the Nick kind of principal actors, not leads, but the ones who kind of come in fairly often would end up going over to Disney Channel. And I know David Archuleta's a different case, but I think it's interesting how frequently they kind of sniped their actors. But it makes sense, though. I mean, he was really popular at the time. He had just recently won American Idol. And I think that their decisions to do this, they were trying to be very tasteful with it, like put celebrity cameos in gracefully. I mean, we know we had the Jonas Brothers come in, we had all those crossover episodes, but it wasn't like, I mean, to me it wasn't overdone. They were trying to pick the people that kids would find the most entertaining or would want to watch, and just good marketing. It's a good marketing strategy, and one of many, many that they employed. And that brings us to part 3, the Disney Channel, or what we can tentatively call the Disney to Disney pipeline. Ooh, oh, 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 yeah. Disney Channel not only cycled actors from different children's networks and celebrities, they cycled their own actors so much. And this still happens, but not quite as much as I feel like it did in the early 2010s, or even early 2000s. So a few examples, we've got sister actors Tia and Tamara, and they were in Twitches. Xenon, we get Raven Simone from Xenon, and also That's So Raven. Even Stevens, we get Shia LaBeouf, who was in Holes. Quince, Kimberly J. Brown, who you know from most of the Halloween Town movies except the last one, which does not count. Lizzie McGuire, Hilary Duff, Cadet Kelly. Also Halloween Town, we get Lucas Grabeel, who was in High School Musical, and that's just like a couple. There are so many. Like, I could sit here listing examples for like 20 minutes. It's just a really good strategy. I mean, you're taking actors from programs that kids already liked and putting them into something else that they might not like, but now you have to see it because, you know, Lucas Grable's in it, so that's gonna be good. Maybe. I mean, I feel like he made some questionable film choices, but not necessarily in Disney. More like... Anyway, you get my point though. They kind of brought people in, which brought more viewership, and it's not a unique strategy, but it sort of created this like Disney cinematic universe where they would not cross over stories, but they would cross over actors. And then Nickelodeon also did it with Miranda Cosgrove from Drake and Josh into iCarly, and Victoria Justice from Zoe 101 into Victorious. So they weren't the only ones. It was a strategy implemented by other networks, but it really, really worked for them. This continued after Hannah Montana, but I do think that it changed the formula a little bit. So you had before just cycling actors into different programs, but then once they saw the success that Miley had in becoming a pop star and how that drew in more attention to the Disney music programs, they would cycle through their same actors. So you get like Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez and Sunny with a Chance, Wizards of Waverly Place, and then they were both in Princess Protection Program and a couple of other things. But you also see them trying to be pop stars. And that was a Disney Channel method. So instead of just making them one kind of area, they brought them into another. And that happened over and over and over again. Before Hilary Duff, Hollywood Records, which is a Disney Channel subsidiary, was kind of a joke. And that's not just me saying it. Then Disney Channel Music Group chairman, the one who was credited for the success of the label, said, Hollywood Records was worse than a startup record company. It was the most maligned record company in recording history. So that's not good. But Hilary Duff's album and the success that it had gave more credibility to the label, and they were able to start expanding from there. However, despite the other bigger names and bigger bands that would go on to sign with Hollywood Records that didn't have any real association with Disney, it was the Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus situation that really blew it up into what we've seen in the expansion after that. So besides Hilary Duff and Miley Cyrus, you have Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, the Jonas Brothers, Bridget Mendler, Zendaya, I think even for a time, were all signed to Hollywood Records. It wasn't very long, and some of them were in exclusive contracts, but it does mean that they all got their start in music through Disney Channel to some degree, or Disney, the company. And I find that to mean that Miley Cyrus, Hannah Montana, was the prototype for developing this Disney Channel pop star that we've come to see. And this is where we kind of circle back to the very beginning of the video when I was talking about the Mouseketeers in the late 80s, early 90s that are successful, like Christina Aguilera, Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, etc. I don't count them in the same category of like Disney Channel pop stars because it's not Disney that made them big in that regard. They kind of went on to do other things, and sometimes they would come back and do little like cameos in projects on Disney, but it's not anything near the same level of intensity and intention that Disney had with the later stars. So while they are big and in music, I don't think that's quite the same thing, if that makes sense. So now we can see a little bit of how Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus were able to begin to weave through different aspects of Disney Channel, its subsidiaries, and how it influenced different future actors in the network. It's because of the show and of Miley Cyrus that this new era of Disney was born. Which brings us to part 4, pre and post Hannah Montana.
Ooh, whoa, whoa, yeah.
Before the show, there were 3 music-based Disney Channel IPs, Gotta Kick It Up, In Tune, which is like a reality show sort of thing, and then the Cheetah Girls, which we talked about a little bit before. Then High School Musical and Hannah Montana came out, And just look at all of these other things that came after it that involved music in some way. It's a lot. It's a lot of things. Because of the success of Hannah Montana and the first High School Musical, the second High School Musical was greenlit, followed by Camp Rock in 2008 starring the Jonas Brothers, who would later go on to have their own music-based show, and Demi Lovato, who starred in their own 2009 show, Sunny with a Chance. And like we were saying, looking at all of these things, there are tons. Shake It Up, Austin Alley, Ant Farm, So Random. Then we get the movies like Starstruck and Camp Rock 2, Lemonade Mouth, Let It Shine, and Descendants. So we can already see there's a lot more going on after we see High School Musical and Hannah Montana than before. Since High School Musical and Hannah Montana came out around the same time, why am I saying that it is Hannah Montana specifically that ignited all of this change? Well, it's a little bit of what I touched on before, which is the intention behind it. So I think that High School Musical was able to create a foundation for the films that came after it, but I think it was Hannah Montana and all of the planning and development that went into it that led to the way that Disney Channel made their projects. You know, it was the music-based things, they're making albums for their stars, and it's just how the intention behind the programs were able to develop into these new things, if that makes any sense. Also, High School Musical did end up inspiring other programs, which I'm assuming Camp Rock has to be a direct derivative from High School Musical. I mean, it's basically the same thing, but at camp, kind of. So you can see how that translates more directly, but then I think that Hannah Montana was able to lead to the development of music-based kids programming in other television shows on other networks. And that is where we come up with part 5, Nickelodeon.
Yeah, yeah, ooh.
When Hannah Montana first aired, Nickelodeon was in the middle of several successful shows like Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, Drake and Josh, and Unfabulous. In 2007, iCarly premiered, which if you want a deep dive into iCarly, there's an amazing one. Quinton Reviews did so much work. I watched through all of the videos. So long, but very, very well done. So we'll leave that there. Or there. Somewhere. It's probably down there. Nickelodeon execs asked Dan Schneider, who is the producer, director, I think, of several of Nickelodeon's top shows, but also has been involved in a lot of, speculation about not so good things, but we're gonna not gloss over it, but that's not what this is about right now. But we're gonna move on for now. But that's just, keep that in mind, I guess. To make a music-based show to follow where the kids are. And one executive specifically said that kids are into music, maybe more than ever, and we asked Dan to create a music-based show. This New York Times article had said that the aim, explained Marjorie Kahn, executive vice president for original programming and development at Nickelodeon, is to capture the ears as well as the hearts and young minds of viewers, in much the way that Walt Disney Company turned Miley Cyrus's Hannah Montana. Well, there we have it. That's it. Video over. No, but you can see that the success that Hannah Montana had directly correlated into Nickelodeon's decisions and the programming that followed. So following the market led to several new shows, like Big Time Rush and Victorious. They even continued the model provided by Disney of taking actors and putting them into new shows by taking Jennette McCurdy from iCarly and Ariana Grande from Victorious and making Sam and Cat, which lasted, I think, 1 or 2 seasons and had some good stuff, I guess. This is where we get our very first taste of how Hannah Montana may have influenced the career of Ariana Grande. And I know this seems very loose, and I don't want this to be misconstrued because I am 100% sure that she would have been remarkably successful without being Cat Valentine. But I will say that it did jumpstart her into being in the public eye, even though she was successful previously in the musical 13 on Broadway with Liz Gillies, who was also in Victorious. I'm going to leave this here for now, and I know it seems like I might be copying out a little bit because it's a whole point in my initial argument, but we have several more videos coming after this, so I don't want to get too in-depth because this is already going to be pretty long. So we're going to move on to part 6, the Disney image.
Ooh, oh, oh.
I would be doing a disservice to all of you and me and also all of the Disney actors if I didn't talk a little bit about this. And that's how Disney has treated their kids over the years and their child actors. You probably remember the Jonas Brothers having those purity rings a long time ago. And they have admitted in future interviews that part of this was because their father was a pastor and they were led to think that this was like, you know, the right thing to do. But also Nick was like 12, I think, or something like that, when they first made that declaration. And I just think it's so weird that we all just were like, yeah, that's fine to think about the future sex life of a child. That was just really strange to me, that was a concept. I mean, at the time I was also a child, so I don't think it really crossed my mind much, nor did I really think that hard about what it meant. But as an adult looking back, that was pretty weird. And in addition though, it wasn't just like their own decision or the decision of their family to be made public. This was like a strictly marketed, like cultivated thing by Disney to give them these pure images, and it's not just them. You got the same thing going on with Miley Cyrus, Jordan Sparks, Selena Gomez, and Demi Lovato, who are all painted as these like pure figures, and that does a lot of lasting damage. The Time article I mentioned from 2006 also had a very interesting thing to say about this whole situation. They were searching for the actress to play Hannah Montana for a really long time because they wanted actors who can balance school with the demands of a TV show and not end up in the tabloids. That didn't work out for them, but it's not even the actor's fault. Like, they've been put in these situations where they're growing up on camera and every mistake that they make is televised and nitpicked, and like all of us made mistakes at those ages. Like, we were growing up and being dumb kids and they had to be watched while they were doing it. It's just, I don't think in any way it's the children's fault. And sure, when you're an adult it's different because you make your own choices, but I think a lot of the psychological impacts that growing up in front of the camera on Disney with someone so like tightly, like they're being choked, like their creativity, their individuality, their maturity, all of that was just choked out, basically, by Disney, because they wouldn't let them grow up. They made them be these like characters forever, where they were playing a character in real life. They weren't allowed to be who they were, and that's extremely detrimental. Like I said, there's no way that that's good for any child or adult mentally. In that same article from before, the then Disney Channel Entertainment president Gary Marsh said, "We have brand promises to keep." And they tried so hard to keep these promises that they didn't care at all about the ramifications of those choices. And we saw a lot of what happened. And I could go through and list all these examples of previous Disney Channel actors who acted out, but I really don't want to do that. I don't think that's really going to give any additional insight here, and I don't really like exploiting the, mental health problems or different sorts of situations that people have gone through for the sake of a video. I just don't think that that's necessary. Plus, you probably already know a lot of what happened, so I'm not really going to get into that. But just, for the sake of this discussion, there have been a lot of instances where these Disney Channel actors that we've been talking about end up doing things in the public eye, and they're not always good things. What matters is why it happened. Whereas pre-2000s Disney had no identity, this new version of Disney had so much of an identity to live up to that they really didn't care what they had to do to get to it. A lot of former Disney Channel actors have gone on to have successful music careers and pretty decent acting careers as well, but I think that's more in spite of Disney than because of it, because Disney Channel treats them like the wet rag that wipes off the sweaty brow of society and is wrung out until there's no individuality left and it's in the shape of Mickey Mouse's lanced off ears. So, yeah, I don't think they were really doing them any favors. So I think we can also link this traumatizing situation back to Hannah Montana, because the formula that Hannah Montana made for a successful Disney Channel star is what also made for very traumatized child actors. This video isn't meant to be a criticism of Disney, although I do have a few notes, but I think that it's just a necessary thing to bring up because it's a really big problem still to this day. They have been working, from what I gather, they have been working to have more child advocates on sets and different approaches to how they treat their actors, but it's not done. And we also have a lot of problems with vlogging channels and family channels and child exploitation on YouTube, and there's a couple really good videos that I'm going to link down below. I know Smokey had a really good one about that, And child actors like Alyson and Jennette McCurdy also have spoken out a lot about their experiences being child actors in that sort of era. So I just wanted to bring that up as sort of a sub-point to everything else that's been going on, and because I do think that it connects to our current discussion. In this video, we've looked at Disney Channel and the history of it a little bit, pre and post Hannah Montana, Hannah Montana's effects on Nickelodeon, on Disney Channel, and the Disney pipeline of children and how that's negatively impacted lots of people. So what do you think? Has Hannah Montana changed the entertainment industry, or maybe at least a little bit of it? Am I just like cuckoo bandanas? Let me know down below. I have so much more to say about this topic, how it affected music, TV, generally entertainment. There's so much more to say, which is why I will be saying it in future videos, hopefully not too long from now, where we're going to look at all the Hannah Montana shows and movies and crossovers and everything else. So if that's interesting to you, subscribe, hit the bell, all of those wonderful things. But for now, I think that's where we're going to leave it, guys. So thank you so much for watching, and for now, sweet dreams.